For almost a decade, the world heard only one version of the past, and Trevor Engelson stayed silent. He built a new life, stepped away from the noise, and convinced himself that silence was the only way to protect his peace. But silence always has an expiration date. And the moment he realized that the world had turned his story into someone else's narrative, something inside him snapped open slowly, quietly, but powerfully. People always wondered why his family seemed distant during those years, why they never fully embraced the relationship, why they looked uncomfortable even when everyone else insisted the couple looked perfect on the outside. Now, with whispers finally surfacing from those who stood closest to Trevor back then, the picture forming is darker, heavier, and far more complicated than anyone imagined. Because this was never about jealousy. It was never about resentment. It was about a family who sensed something their son couldn't. A truth hiding behind smiles, behind charm, behind confidence. And it began the day Meghan allegedly made a confession that rewired Trevor's entire understanding of their future. Behind closed doors, away from cameras and friends, she told him she couldn't have children. No hesitation, no discussion, no tears. Just a statement that shattered the dreams he always thought he would share with the woman he loved. Most people would ask questions, seek doctors, explore possibilities. But Trevor didn't. He didn't push, didn't doubt her, didn't search for answers. He simply accepted it because loving her meant adjusting to the future she described. He redesigned his entire life in that moment, dreams, expectations, everything. And through all of it, he never used her confession as a weapon, never hurled it during arguments, never let it become a scar between them. He stayed loyal to a truth he believed was real. But years later, when the world saw Meghan standing beside Prince Harry holding a child, then another, that old memory cracked open in him like a silent thunder. Not anger, confusion. Not resentment, heartbreak. A kind of hurt that doesn't scream. It settles deep, under the skin, waiting, burning. That moment became the first fracture, the first shadow of doubt. And that shadow grew darker when the marriage ended, not with a conversation, not with closure, but with a package. A small, light box dropped at his door like a forgotten delivery. Inside was her wedding ring. No explanation, no goodbye, no final words from the woman he had shared years of his life with. Just a ring, returned like an unwanted item. Those who were close to Trevor say that moment crushed him in a way no fight ever could. Because it wasn't about the ring. It was about what it symbolized. She had already left the marriage long before she mailed it. She had made her decision silently, privately, without giving him the decency of a final conversation. And when Trevor held that ring, everything his family had sensed suddenly made sense. The distance, the emotional imbalance, the uneasiness they could never quite explain. The marriage didn't break the day the ring arrived. It had been breaking long before. The ring was just the evidence. But even then, Trevor didn't know the whole story. The mailed ring told him she was gone, but not why. The why came later. Slowly. Shockingly. Through people who claimed they saw Meghan before her royal chapter began. Whispers said that years earlier, she had created a vision board. Not just a dream collage, but a blueprint. A mapped-out future. And right at the center of it was Prince Harry. Not as a celebrity crush. Not as fantasy. But as a goal, a direction, a destination. Those who claimed to have seen the board said it was unsettling, not because having dreams is wrong, but because the dream seemed calculated, intentional, structured. She had studied the royal family, imagined a life inside that world, charted a path to a future far beyond Hollywood. And suddenly, Trevor understood the shift he felt years earlier. Meghan wasn't drifting. She was moving towards something bigger. Something royal. And he was simply the chapter she needed to turn the page. But the whispers didn't stop there. When she met Harry for the first time, insiders claim she intentionally wore Princess Diana's favorite perfume, the scent tied to Harry's deepest memories, grief, and childhood wounds. Scent is powerful. It can unlock emotions, soften boundaries, create connection. To Harry, that first meeting felt magical, comforting, strangely familiar. But to those who knew Meghan well, It didn't feel accidental. It felt intentional. A quiet strategy, not manipulation with force. Just subtle emotional precision. A pull on a heartstring she knew was already fragile. And it worked. Harry didn't just fall for her. He fell for the emotion she created. When Trevor learned this detail years later, everything clicked, painfully. The quiet strategies he felt but never understood, the emotional distance, the abrupt ending, the mailed ring. It all felt like pieces of a pattern he had been too close to see. Meanwhile, Harry spent years defending her against criticism, believing he knew her better than anyone, believing her past held no shadows. But sources say that when Trevor finally broke his silence, something shifted inside Harry, not anger, but confusion. Deep confusion. The kind that makes a man stop defending and start remembering. People close to the Montecito circle whisper that Harry began rewatching moments in his mind, interviews, conversations, choices, trying to understand what didn't add up. And one line he allegedly said stunned those around him: "Stop blaming the palace for everything." Those 7 words exposed exhaustion, doubt, cracks in the foundation. For the first time, Harry wasn't just listening. He was questioning. And that is where the story takes a darker turn. Because whispers say Trevor's silence wasn't empty, it was controlled, restrained. And that restraint is crumbling. Insiders claim he has documents, timelines, letters, receipts, pieces of a story he never wanted to tell, but may now be forced to share. Not out of revenge, not out of fame, but because he carried the truth alone for too long while the world painted him as a footnote. If the full truth ever comes out, this won't be a story about silence anymore. It will be a story about exposure, about intentions, about strategies, about the price of reinvention. Trevor's silence was never weakness. It was loyalty. It was dignity. It was respect, even when respect wasn't returned. But the moment he finally spoke, the narrative shifted. Not because he attacked her, not because he shouted, but because he lived the version of her the world never saw. And now, the world is listening, watching, waiting. Because when the first man from her past finally speaks, the question isn't what he revealed. The question is who speaks next. This may not be the end of her story, but it might be the beginning of her reckoning. And once the first domino falls, the rest never stays standing for long.